what are the requirements to obtain an MSB license in the US if I have a company abroad?
Okay, first, the MSB license is Money Service Business License. It is also known as Money Transmitter License outside of the US. So like in Europe, it's not MSB, it's not Money Service Business, but Money Transmitter Service, MTS, or Money Service Transmitter. I'm sorry, Money Transmitter Service, MTS. Here in the US, basically the MSB license is needed when one person is going to transfer money on behalf of another person to a third party. Same thing as PayPal, same thing as Western Union or Zoom.com. And the requirements for somebody who is non-US citizen, someone who is US citizens are exactly the same. There is no change. But the basic requirement for this license is that the company shows, in addition to the application, also shows anti-money laundering policy. This is a book, a brochure, not a brochure, a book that the company should show, to provide with the application. In addition, company should also provide a business plan of what is the reason, what is the market, how the company is going to operate. And this needs to be attached to the application, in the state. Here in the US, there is no one license application for money service businesses. You have to apply state by state. Just to give you an example, PayPal has 48 licenses of MSB in the USA, 48, almost 51, because, well, I think that they have one of the states doesn't require, I don't remember which one, but then they have 48 MSB licenses. So it all depends where you plan to operate and where your clients will be. In addition to all these requirements, you also need to submit fingerprints. So if someone who is not in the US will need to come to the US and have fingerprints, and the fingerprints that submit to the state, in this case, to the financial division of the state, and the state will provide you a code for those fingerprints to be submitted directly to the database of the state. Also, you need at least, and depending on the state, for example, this varies with the state. Some states require $100,000 capital. Some other states require $50,000, $100,000 in capital. Other states require $500,000 in capital. So it all depends on the state where you plan to operate. States like New York and New Jersey, they are in the $5K to $1 million in capital. So it's very high. It all depends of the activity of the state in those cases. For non-US citizens, they need to have an office in the US. Well, this is for US citizens and non-US citizens, foreign citizens. The company who is going to apply, and this is, I forgot at the beginning, if you want to apply to this license, you have to open a corporation or a LLC in the USA. That's the first requirement. So let's say in Texas, or say Florida, you want to apply to an MSB license in Florida, you first open an LLC or a corporation in Florida. That's the first requirement. Second, you also rent an office, and then you hire one person there. In the office, you have a telephone number, a fax number, you have an email, you have a website, you have all those requirements, because that is required of the application. So you open the company, you rent an office, you hire a person here in the US, and with all that, and then you also open your own website for the company, And then you have an email. With all those requirements, an email with the company name. With all those requirements, you can start your application. Once you have all that, you will need to provide a business plan. You also need to provide the anti-money laundering policy. You also need to provide in the application, when you apply the fingerprints, either for US citizens or non-US citizens, you need to provide identification. This will be a passport or could be a driver license in the USA. But you have, if you are a foreign citizen, you have to have one person here in the US. That's why I said at the beginning that, well, before, that you have to have one employee. You have to hire someone who is to be the contact of the application, because that name will be on the application. So once you have all that, you have the company, you have the employee, you have the office, you have the website, you have the email address, you started the application, you have the business plan, you have the anti-money laundering policy, you do your fingerprints, and then you have to provide, if you have partners either in the US or outside of the US, you need to provide the IDs of all those partners. You need to identify anyone who is a shareholder or a partner of the company or of the LLC that is doing the application.
Oh, okay.
So with all those elements, once you have all this, you need to post at the bank the capital. This will be $100,000 in the bank. And you need a CPA, an auditor, to audit that, meaning that the auditor will issue a report, and that report will mean that the money is there. That's an audit, that's an initial audit, and that audit needs to be attached to the report, to the application, the MSB license. If you have a company that has been doing business already, you need to audit the financial statements. A CPA, a certified public accountant, needs to audit the financial statements and attach that audit report to the application for the MSB license.
Okay.
Once you have all this documentation, you can submit the application to the Finance Commission, or to the Finance Commission of the state, and then it will take at least 90 days for the application. In addition to that, some states require that you also post a bond. A bond is like a policy that you give, or the guarantee, it's like the guarantee that you give that you are able to provide, if anything, if it is required, you are able to provide the money that the initial capital that is required. This could be, as I said before, from $50,000 to $1 million. 50,500, and other state you require $1 million. So in addition to the initial capital that is required, some states also require that you post a bond, like a guarantee bond, that you are able to come up with all this money of capital up to $1 million. When you have all this, you are able to submit the application. Some states, for example, Georgia, Tennessee, and some three more states, they have created like a jointly application where you apply to one state and that application also works for the other states. But remember, it has to be separate. It doesn't mean that you're applying to one and then you get 5. No, you have to apply one individually. But that can be done online. States like Florida, Texas, they do not allow online application. That has to be on paper, and then you can submit it online. But then there are other states that you can submit all the information online. It's like going to an email and then put all the information. Mm-hmm. That is the process for the application of a MSB license. It is, and in addition, one final requirement is that you have to appoint a compliance officer. Compliance officer means that person will be the one in charge for enforcing the anti-money laundering and the all the policies and procedures of the company, because you also need policies and procedures. I didn't mention this before. You need a business plan, you need anti-money laundering policy, and you also need policies and procedures of the company. Otherwise, how the compliance officer is going to enforce the policies and procedures if there are no policies and procedures? And that officer, the officer of compliance or compliance officer, will need to be named on the application. So for foreign citizens, it's a little difficult because they will have to establish first, hire a person, rent an office, and then provide all this documentation that is required. So it's a little difficult for someone who is not in the US. We have helped foreign clients to do that, but that is the process. You have to have a compliance officer. You have to have an employee. If the employee has experience as a compliance officer, has experience in banking or in compliance of banking or compliance in related activities, like activities similar to PayPal or Western Union, then that employee can work as well as the compliance officer. But if the employee is only a staff employee and has no experience for compliance, then you need to find a person who has experience in compliance.
Got it. Okay.
And that person needs to be local, US citizens with Social Security, and in the US with US address.